There we go. Everything is weirdly spaced today, and I don't know why. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to move on to sort of a new thing. Lots of busy things to work on today. So we finished up our essays last week, and now we're ready for a new idea. So today you're going to listen to a story called "Thank You, Mr. Falker." It's by Patricia Polacco. She writes lots of interesting books. I'm sure you've heard one of her books before, if any teacher has ever read you a book, because she writes so many of them. She is a famous author. And our question today in our room that went along with our graph was, would you rather be a famous author or a famous musician? And a lot of my friends in the room picked famous author. And so this gal is definitely comes under that category of a famous author. And she has a very set style that she uses, and you might recognize as I read through it some interesting things. So those of you at home, I did not mention to have your EL spiral nearby, but what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go ahead and take out your EL spiral. And Paxton, if you just have a piece of paper, that would work, or something to jot down some ideas. Oh, you've got everything, says Mrs. Aubin. So you're good. Okay, so EL spiral, grab that EL spiral. My friends here, go ahead and open to a blank page. I would like you to kind of, I'm gonna stop at certain parts during the story, and I want you to think about, you as a driver, when we said, as you're a reader, you should be a driver, right? You should be thinking about questions and wondering things and making connections and all of those things that we have talked about what you do when you're a reader. And I'm going to take some time to stop throughout the story. And I would like you at that time to jot down some things you're thinking about while you're listening. Okay, I want you to be a driver during this story and not just a passenger who's listening, but I want to be a thinker. All right, Mr. Cooper, what's going on? But are you okay? Okay. All right. So there's Charlie. Got Charlie there. All right. So I'm going to use my document camera, but and I don't. Unfortunately, this is one of those books that they give us for EL that we don't have multiple copies of. So for those friends at home, I also attached a YouTube video of this book. So if you liked it the first time and you'd like to have it again, like to listen to it again for a different reader other than me, you can do that. So Patricia Polacco, thank you, Mr. Falker. Here we go. And it's let's look at our copyright date. Copyright date is 1998. 1998. So who thinks they know how many years ago that is? Raising their hand. Mr. Paxton, birthday guy. How many years is that? Gotta get used to unmuting.
22.
22. And how did you figure that out?
Because if you add 2 to 1998, you have 2000. Then if you add 20, then it's 2020.
Very good. Nice job, Mr. Paxton. Birthday guy is on it today. All right. Oh, hey, Miss Liz, would you turn off that front light for me, the one closest to the door? Thank you. I always get that weird little shine going on there. Here we go. All right. The grandpa held the jar of honey so that all the family could see. Then he dipped a ladle into it and drizzled honey on the cover of a small book. Is that kind of unusual? Yes. The little girl had just turned 5. Stand up, little one, he cooed. I did this for your mother, your uncles, your brother, and now you. Then he handed the book to her. Taste. She dipped her finger into the honey and put it into her mouth. What is that taste? The grandma asked. Sorry, got it wrong. Adult. The little girl answered, "Sweet." Then all of the family said in a single voice, "Yes, and so is knowledge. But knowledge is like the bee that made the sweet honey. You have to chase it through the pages of a book." The little girl knew that the promise to read was at last hers. Soon she was going to read. Trisha, the littlest girl in the family, grew up loving books. Her school teacher mother read to her every night. Her red-headed brother brought his books from home, from school, and shared them. And whenever she visited the family farm, her grandfather or grandmother read to her by the stone fireplace. When she turned 5 and went to kindergarten, most of all, she hoped to read. Each day, she saw the kids at the first grade across the hall reading. And before the year was over, some of the kids in her own class began to read. Not Trisha. Still, she loved being at school because she could draw. The other kids would crowd around her and watch her do her magic with the crayons. In first grade, you'll learn to read, her brother said. In first grade, Trisha sat in the circle with the other kids. They were all holding Our Neighborhood, their first reader, sounding out letters and words. They said beh, beh, oi, boy, and ook, look. The teacher smiled at them, and then they put all the sounds together and got a word. Right. But when Trisha looked at a page, all she saw were wiggling shapes. And when she tried to sound out words, the other kids laughed at her. "Trisha, what are you looking at in that book?" they'd say. "I'm reading," she'd say back to them. But her teacher would move on to the next person. Always when it was her turn to read, her teacher had to help her with every single word. And while the other kids moved up into the second reader and third reader, she stayed alone in Our Neighborhood. Trisha began to feel different. She began to feel dumb. All right, I would like you just to take a moment and write your thoughts down in your EL spiral. Jot down a couple things you're thinking right now. What are you thinking about at this point in the story? I need everybody to get a thought down. All right, we're going to do a little sharing a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and go on. The harder words got for this little girl, the more and more time she spent drawing. How she loved to draw, or just sitting and dreaming, or when she could, going for walks with her grandmother. One summer day, she and her grandma were walking together in the small woods behind their farm. It was twilight. The air was sweet and warm. Fireflies were just coming up from the grasses. As they walked, Trisha said, "Grandma, do you think I'm different?" "Of course," her grandmother answered. "To be different is the miracle of life. You see all of those little fireflies? Every one is different." "Do you think I'm smart?" Trisha didn't feel smart. Her grandmother hugged her. "You are the smartest, quickest, dearest little thing ever." Right then, the little girl felt safe in her grandma's arms. Reading didn't matter so much. Trisha's grandma used to say that the stars were holes in the sky. They were where the light of heaven coming from the other side. And she used to say that someday she would be on the other side where the light comes from. One evening they lay on the grass together and counted the lights from heaven. You know, her grandma said, all of us will go there someday. Hang on to the grass or you'll lift right off the ground and there you'll be. They laughed and both hung onto the grass. But it was not long after that night that her grandma must have let go of the grass because she went to where the lights were on the other side. And not long after that, Trisha's grandpa let go of the grass too. School seemed harder and harder now. All right, take a moment to write something down that you're thinking. Write down what you're thinking about. Could be something that the story reminds you of. Could be something that you're thinking, you could be doing some predicting. You could be doing some questioning. Ask a question. I'd like everybody to be a driver right now, though. Think about what you're thinking about. All my friends at home, you're adding something to your thoughts. Lyric, did you get a chance to write something down? Okay. Lila Morris, you got something written down? Okay, good job. All right, and you can keep going. If you're finishing your sentence, that's fine. All right, here's our picture. A little bit of the picture there. Reading was just plain torture. When Sue Ellen read her page or Tommy Bob read his page, they read so easily that Trisha would watch the top of their heads to see if something was happening to their heads that wasn't happening to hers. Add and numbers were the hardest thing of all to read. She never added anything right. Line the numbers up before you add them, the teacher would say. But when Trisha tried, the numbers looked like a stack of blocks, wobbly and ready to fall. She knew she was dumb. Then one day her mother announced that she had gotten a teaching job in California, a long way from the family farm in Michigan. Even though her grandma and grandpa were gone, the little girl didn't want to move. Maybe though the teachers and kids in her new school wouldn't know how dumb she was. She and her mother and brother moved across the country in a two-tone 1949 Plymouth. It took 5 days. A long way from Michigan. Are you making some predicting from the picture? Making some predictions. But at the new school, it was the same. When she tried to read, she stumbled over words. The cat and the ran. She was reading like a baby in the 3rd grade. And when her teacher read along with them and called on Trisha for an answer, she gave the wrong answer every time. Hey, dummy, a boy called out to her on the playground. How come you're so dumb? Other kids stirred near him and they laughed. Trisha could feel the tears burning in her eyes. How she longed to go back to her grandparents' farm in Michigan. I'd like you to take a moment to write something down. Write what you're thinking about now. Leo, did you get something written down for me? Okay, great job. Thank you. I love all these drivers. Good job. Not just listening, but thinking. Got the reading. Good job. All right, if you're still finishing up, go ahead. I'm just going to move on to the next page here. You can see. Now, Trisha wanted to go to school less and less. I have a sore throat, she'd say to her mother, or I have a stomach ache. She dreamed more and more and drew more and more, and she hated, hated, hated school. Then when Trisha started 5th grade, the school was all abuzz. There was a new teacher. He was tall and elegant. Everybody loved his striped coat and slick gray pants. He wore the neatest clothes. All the usual teachers' pets gathered around him. Stevie Joe and Alice Marie, Davy and Michael Lee. But right from the start, it didn't seem to matter to Mr. Falker which kids were the cutest, or the smartest, or the best at anything. Mr. Falker would stand behind Trisha whenever she was drawing and whisper, "This is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Do you know how talented you are?" When he said this, even the kids who teased her would turn around in their seats and look at her drawings, but they still laughed whenever she gave the wrong answer. Then one day, she had to stand up and read, which she hated. She was stumbling through a page in Charlotte's Web, and the page was going all fuzzy when the kids began to laugh out loud. Mr. Falker, in his plaid jacket and his butterfly tie, said, "Stop! Are all of you so perfect that you can look at another person and find fault with her?" Okay, take a moment, write down what you think. Ooh. That must have been a good page. I'm looking at those pencils, really having good ideas. Busy, right? Trisha. Wow, lots of good ideas. Lots of writing going on today. Nice job. Go ahead and finish your idea. I'm going to go ahead and keep writing or reading. That was the last day that anyone laughed out loud or made fun of her, all except Eric. He had sat behind Trisha for 2 whole years, but he seemed almost to hate her. Trisha didn't know why. He waited by the door of the classroom for her and pulled her hair. He waited for her on the playground, leaned into her face and called her Toad. Trisha was afraid to turn any corner for fear Eric would be there. She felt completely alone. The only time she was really happy was when she was around Mr. Falker. He let her erase the blackboards. Only the best students got to do that. He patted her on the back whenever she got something right, and he looked hard and mean at any kid who teased her. But the nicer Mr. Falker was to Trisha, the worse Eric treated her. He got all the other kids to wait for her on the playground or in the cafeteria or even in the bathroom and to jump out and call her stupid or ugly. And Trisha began to believe them. She discovered that if she asked to go to the bathroom just before recess, she could hide under the inside stairwell during the free time and not have to go outside at all. In the dark place, she felt completely safe. But one day at recess, Eric followed her to her secret hiding place. "Have you become a mole?" he laughed. And he pulled her out into the hall and danced around her. "Dumbbell, dumbbell, maggoty old dumbbell." Trisha buried her head in her arms and curled up in a ball. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. It was Mr. Falker. He marched Eric down to the office, and when he came back, he found Trisha. "I don't think you'll have to worry about that boy again," he said softly. "What was he teasing you about, little one?" "I don't know," Trisha shrugged. Trisha was sure that Mr. Faulkner believed that she could read. She had learned to memorize what the kid next to her was reading, or she'd wait for Mr. Faulkner to help her with her sentence. Then she'd say the same thing he did. "Good," he would say. Then one day, Mr. Falker asked her to stay after school and help wash the blackboards. He put on music and brought out little sandwiches as they worked and talked. All at once, he said, "Let's play a game. I'll shout out letters and you write them on the board with a wet sponge as quickly as you can." "A," he shouted, and she wiped a watery A. "8," he shouted. She made a watery 8. 14, 3, D, M, Q, he shouted out. Many, many letters and numbers. Then he walked up behind her, and together they looked at the board. It was a watery mess. Trisha knew that none of the letters or numbers looked like they should. She threw the sponge down and tried to run. Mr. Falker caught her arm and asked and sank to his knees in front of her. "You poor baby," he said. "You think you're dumb, don't you? How awful for you to be so lonely and afraid." She sobbed. "But little one, you don't understand. You don't see letters or numbers the way other people do. And you've gotten through school all this time and fooled many, many good teachers." He smiled at her. That took cunning, smartness, and such bravery." Then he stood up and finished washing the board. "We're going to change all that, little girl. You're going to read. I promise you that." Please write down some of your thoughts. Take some time to write down what you're thinking or feeling or wondering, questioning, or predicting. I'm going to keep going, but if you're getting your thoughts down, go ahead and finish them. Now, almost every day after school, she met with Mr. Falker and Miss Plessy, a reading teacher. They did a lot of things she didn't even understand. At first, she made circles in sand, and then big sponge circles on the blackboard, going from left to right, left to right. Another day, they flicked letters on a screen, and Trisha shouted them out loud. Still other days, she worked with wooden blocks and built words. Letters, 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 words, 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 always sounding them out. And that felt good. But though she'd read words, she hadn't read a whole sentence. And deep down, she still felt dumb. And then one spring day, had it been 3 months or 4 months since they had started, Mr. Falker put a book in front of her. She'd never seen it before. He picked a paragraph in the middle of the page and pointed at it. Almost as if it were magic, or as if light had poured into her brain, the words and sentences started to shape on the page as they never had before. She marched them off to slowly. She read the sentence. Then another and another, and she finally read a paragraph. She understood the whole thing. She didn't notice that Mr. Falker and Miss Plessy had tears in their eyes. All right, write something down. What are you thinking? That night, Tricia ran home without stopping to catch her breath. She bounded up the front steps, threw open the front door, and ran through the dining room to the kitchen. She climbed up on the cupboard and grabbed a jar of honey. Then she went into the living room and found the book on the shelf, and that very book that her grandpa had shown her many years ago. She spooned honey on the cover and tasted the sweetness and said to herself, "The honey is sweet, and so is knowledge, but knowledge is like a bee who makes the honey. It has to be chased through the pages of a book." Then she held the book, honey and all, close to her chest. She could feel tears rolling down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. She was happy, so very happy. All right. The rest of the year became an odyssey of discovery and adventure for the little girl. She learned to love school. I know, because that little girl was me, Patricia Polacco. Who's Patricia Polacco again? The author of the book. The very famous author of many, many books. Yes, it is. I saw Mr. Falker again some 30 years later at a wedding. I walked up to him and introduced myself. At first, he had difficulty placing me. Then I told him, no, there was two parfaits. Two parfaits.
Nope, two parfaits. Yes. All right, bye-bye.
I put it in correctly. That's right, double check it. All right, I saw Mr. Falker again some 30 years ago at a wedding. He walked up to him and introduced myself. At first, he had difficulty placing me. Then I told him who I was and how he had changed my life so many years ago. He hugged me and asked me what I did for a living. "Why, Mr. Falker," I answered, "I make books for children." "Thank you, Mr. Falker. Thank you." I'd like you to write one more thing down. Now that you know it's a true story and how it was written and why it was written, I think, respond to how that makes you feel or what makes you think about this famous, famous author who writes all kinds of books. How does that make you feel? Ms. Haley, did you get something written? Ms. Haley Calendar? Yeah, good. Logan, got something written down? Awesome. Clara, did you get something written down for me? Awesome, thank you. All right. I'm going to ask us to think about, I'm going to put away that for the moment. All right, so how do you think Tricia felt when she was being called names? How do you think she felt? Allie, what do you think? Right. So she felt sad because it, thank you. She felt sad, right? Because it made it, do you think it helped how she was going to read by them doing that? No, probably didn't help for sure, did it? What can you do if you find yourself in that situation? What would we do at our school if we found that? No, no. What would you do if that happened here? What would the solution be? Elena, what would you do? Okay, would you stand up for yourself? Okay, so stand up for yourself, tell a teacher. Madison, what else?
I would like, if I was in that situation, I would also tell the teacher and try to, like, things out.
Talk to them, use your iMessage maybe. Is that how that made you feel? Haley, what else?
I would use my iMessage.
Use your iMessage. I feel frustrated or sad or whatever, and really tell them how that was making you feel. Okay. Would Trisha's life be different if she was in our classroom? Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think if she had been here instead of long ago somewhere else, that it would have turned out differently, maybe, or I mean, it would have been different for her? You think so? Why do you think so? Why do you think it'd be? Because I saw lots of yeses. Why would it be different if she was here with us? What do you think, Abby?
She's gonna get bullied.
Okay, you don't think that any of us would have done that? No, nobody would bully. So, Sawyer, what were you thinking? Because I saw you say no, she wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the same for her. What? How come? Oh, I saw you shake your head. Do you think she would have gotten treated that way here if it had been here? No? Okay. Lucas, what are you thinking? Ah, so Lucas says he wonders why the other first graders made fun of her because they probably weren't reading either. So sometimes kids do mean things, right? Even if they don't make sense. But is that something that we value here? Is being mean to other people? Now, what word are we always talking about? What we should be to other people all the time, Marin? Respect, right? Being respectful. Treating others like we would want to be treated. Were those other kids doing that?
No.
Definitely not. So what challenge did Trisha face in this story? What challenge did she face? I'm looking for more hands. Come on, drivers. Show me that you were listening. Josh, what challenge did she have? Being able to read because she couldn't see the letters and the numbers correctly, right? All right. So what else? Oh, Mr. Paxton, who has his raised hand. Would you like to add something to our discussion, buddy? Birthday guy?
That she was getting picked on.
Picked on, right. So not only did she have a challenge of having trouble reading, but now kids are also being mean to her. So instead of having just one challenge, now she has two, right? Multiple challenges. She was scared to go out to recess. How did that make you feel when you found that out, that she was hiding so she wouldn't go out to recess? That's sad because we love to go out to recess, right? And for her to hate recess so much because of the way they were going to treat her, to not even go, that really hurts my heart. So she waited for a teacher to find out she had a problem. Think back to the strategies that we've been doing for overcoming all kinds of challenges, right? What did we say that sometimes people have to do to solve their problems if they can't solve them by themselves? What did we say that you should do, Cooper? Well, we definitely persevere, and she did to some degree, right? She kept trying, but other kids were making her feel bad. But what else did we say? Think back to our book about more than anything else. Ben? Sometimes we have to ask people for help, right? Did it sound like that she went to her mom and told her what was going on? No, she was holding that burden all by herself on her own shoulders, right? It doesn't sound like she asked even her mom to help her. So up to that point, she didn't really have any friends or any adults to help her out. So again, asking for help. So what advice would we have given Trisha, or Patricia, as we find out that's really who it is, right? The author. What would we have told her to maybe do if you were a friend? If you were Trisha's friend in 3rd grade, remember we read about her in 3rd grade, what would you have done? August, what would you have told her? Okay, you'd stand up for her and tell the teacher. What would you tell the teacher? That mean kids were bullying her. Very nice. All right, Bird, what else?
Help her try to read.
Help her to try to read too. Okay, so maybe at recess and do some, helping. Maybe have her bring a book out to recess and help during recess. That's very sweet. Ellie?
I would be her friend and I would help her read and take care of knowing.
Excellent. Stand up for her and be a friend. Very nice. Make sure people aren't bullying her. So is this just another book that tells us why reading is important? Yeah, it certainly does. Was she missing out on things because she couldn't read? Yes. And could you tell from her family that reading was super important? Yeah, it was something they valued very much, right? They had a little kind of ceremony with that, the grandpa had with the honey, and everybody said it together. So it was something that meant a lot to them. So do you think it really, that added to how much it hurt that she couldn't read? Yeah, because they really valued that. So, so we kind of went through, how was the challenge then overcome? How did the challenge get overcome, Charlie? Very good. The teacher helped her read and do math because he recognized that it wasn't just her fault that she couldn't read, right? That when you see letters and numbers differently, that's often thought that there's some different learning disabilities, but one of them is called dyslexia. And kids with dyslexia have a really hard time being able to see and numbers and letters the way that the rest of us see it. And they don't even know that that's wrong, that that's different. If you always saw something the way you saw it and you didn't know that there was a different way, you wouldn't even know that you were having a problem, right? And she thought she was dumb. But what did Mr. Falker help her realize? She's not dumb. She just had an extra challenge, right? She had an extra challenge. Was she a great artist? Yes. So we have talked about that all of us have challenges to overcome, and they're all different. And some of them, I mean, I am not a great artist. So she is definitely better than I am, for sure. And so we all have our challenges, but we all have our strengths too, right? We got to hold on to those strengths for sure. So today I realized usually I start with a learning target, right? But today the rest of our learning target is I can fluently read an excerpt of text aloud for an audiobook. So knowing how important reading is and being able to read well, one of the things that EL wants us to be able to do is to read fluently, right? So today at the end, because this is the end of our whole module, we are going to be doing, you're going to be working, if you're in class, you're going to be working with a group. If you're one of my friends who is at home, you're going to be doing it, you're going to be recording it on your own, because that's pretty impossible to be able to do this well and equitably for everybody at home if you guys had to cooperate. But in here, everybody is going to be able to do is read a text. Listening to an audio version of a text is a great way to get new ideas and new reading skills, and we are going to make some of these because we're going to show what great readers, fluent readers we have become. Because each student in here has become a good reader, and we are going to continue that and show that and prove it. So for those of you who are going to be here, you're each going to have, and we're going to break up so that Mrs. Aubin's class goes back, the homeroom goes back to their room, and my group will be here, and you'll find out what group you're in. But for those individuals, every person in the group is going to be responsible for a section of the story and is going to practice. And you guys are going to help each other like a team. My friends at home, you are going to have to practice and practice and practice and be ready and give yourself, you can have an adult listen to you and help you and give you some suggestions. Tomorrow, you are going to have an opportunity to read to a peer, and we're gonna, those of you who are remote are going to have a breakout room with another person that you're gonna read to, give some stars and steps. But today is just our first day to sort of understand what our part is or what our book is, depending on who you are. We always give you some ideas of what we're looking for, right? Fluent readers, read smoothly. We've been practicing these books for a reason, so that you be ready for when it was time to do the audiobook. You're going to correct yourself after you made a mistake. Mrs. Harrison made a mistake when she was reading the book. She said grandpa instead of grandma, and then I realized that was the wrong thing, and I went back and corrected. We correct ourselves after we make a mistake. Once you realize that you missaid something, you go back. Read in an appropriate volume for everyone to hear. Mrs. Harrison has a microphone, so that helps a little bit. But should all of you talk this loud when you're reading out loud? No, because that'd be too loud, right? And my friends at home, you know, you obviously, if you have a room to yourself, that's fine. But if you're in a room with other people who are also doing their work, a brother or sister or something, you definitely have to have an appropriate volume. Read at an appropriate pace for everyone to understand. So not too fast, not too slow, right? Pause at commas and stop at periods. We need to use that punctuation. We don't want to have run-on sentences that never stop. A period is an excellent place to do what? When you stop, what should you do? You should breathe, right? At the end of a period is a good place to take a breath between sentences. Read questions and exclamations as, what do you do when you see an exclamation mark? Excited, right? You use exclamation voice. You use an excited voice. Exclamation means showing some sort of great emotion. Now, exclamations can be angry. Exclamations can be happy. Exclamations can be surprised. So your voice will need to reflect that. Change your voice and volume depending on meaning. When Mrs. Harrison was Mr. Falker and he saw Eric teasing her, stop was loud and forceful, wasn't it? So that's what kind of things we're looking for your voice and volume. Change the tone to match the message. Patricia was sad. My voice did what? It went down and it sounded sad, right? So change your tone. If there's dialogue, if there are people talking in your story, then you need to make it obvious for those quotation marks that someone new is talking, right? You don't have to make voices. I didn't have to make a Mr. Faulkner voice. I didn't make a Tricia voice. I didn't make a grandma voice, but you could still tell who was talking by the way I used my voice. All right, and I'm gonna move things so you can see that. Change, so sometimes when you're reading, your body language, your facial expression also changes. It's almost impossible to talk excitedly, to read excitedly, and not have what on your face? An excited look, right? It's almost impossible to read in a sad voice without having a sad face. It kind of goes together. The body language conveys the meaning as well. So those are the things you're going to focus today. So so we have, like I said, we have groups in here that are going to be together. We have groups in Mrs. Aubin's class that are going to work together. And my friends at home, I have some information to tell you. Attached to this particular assignment, we have the 2 books. And so Miss Astria and Mr. Charlie and Ben, you're going to be reading the Rain School book. And so it's attached to today's assignment, and you're going to be reading it. And yes, Mrs. Aubin, do I have some other friends that are also?
She says she's supposed to read a book, but she's missing information of what book she's supposed to read.
Okay. All right. So, Lila, you and the rest of my friends that are here are going to be reading Nazarene Secret School. And so, and Mrs. Aubin's gonna put it in the chat for you. So that is attached to the assignment. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna get out of that, maybe I'm gonna get out of this. There we go. Let me go show you on the assignment so that everybody at home can see where they can find their book that they're gonna read. So when you're actually recording it, you're gonna use it on you're gonna look someplace different. So, but today's practice is here. So it says link. It doesn't say Nazarene Secret School. It wouldn't let me change the name of the link, but you're going to click on that and it will give you the entire book of Nazarene Secret School. So you can read the whole, practice reading the whole entire thing. This is not an audiobook version. This is the PDF, so you can look through all those pages. All right. Mrs. Aubin, do you know, I don't have it memorized, if Lyric and Paxton, some of your friends that are at home right now. Okay, I mean, I have it somewhere.
Okay, I'll go get it.
Here. Actually, here you go. So, okay, so Lyric, is Lyric coming back? Or is she gonna be okay, so Miss Lyric, you need to practice Rain School, and your group will come tomorrow. Your group can tell you what pages you're gonna be. And so practice the whole thing. Okay, Lyric, give me a thumbs up if you heard me. Okay, Rain School. And Paxton, you're gonna be doing Nazarene Secret School. All right, buddy? So, all right, can everybody give me a thumbs up if they know which book they need to practice? So Leo, you good? So you know Nazarene, Astria, Rain School, Lyric, Rain School. Let's see, run through all my friends just to make sure. Charlie, you're gonna read Rain School, practice to read Rain School. Okay, Haley, Nazarene, right? Gavin, Nazarene. Okay, I can't seem to get my everybody to get me where I need to be. There we go. All right, Isabella, Nazarene, Jensen, Nazarene, Logan, Nazarene, Ben, Rain School. All right, Miss Lila, Nazarene, Paxton, Nazarene. Okay, good. And Robert, you're going to do Nazarene Secret School, okay? That's what you need to practice. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Okay, good. All right, so that's what your job is right now, is to go to today's assignment. I'll show you one more time. Here's a copy of Rain School. You can click on that one if you're a Rain School friend. If you're a Nazarene School, it just says link, but it's right there for you, okay? And I need you to practice for a while for me, okay? Tomorrow you're going to read to another person and they're gonna give you some stars and steps to do some good practice. All right, my friends, I'm gonna let you go. Don't forget, if you're in Mrs. Aubin's reading group at 12:45 to click on her link, not Mrs. Harrison's link, but I'll see the rest of you that are in my group a little bit later. All right, my friends, go practice. Everybody go.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.